everybody, this is Cheri at djsundry.blogspot.com, and today I'm bringing you a fun project that I just completed this week, and it is a planner project. Now these are student planners, and so I have already completed it because there were so many steps that had to be done that I couldn't do on camera that I decided to go ahead and put them together and get them all done, and then I would come back with a tips and tricks video. So the first thing that you see is the cover. I hand did the covers and I customized them, trying to keep the interest of each person that is receiving the student planner in mind. So I asked, you know, do they like flowers? Do they have a favorite animal? Those kind of questions. What are their favorite colors, to put them together. So then I made, these are 8.5 by 5.5 inch covers, and so then I just customized them. My husband went through and he found this template and he put the name of the student and their grade and their school year on it. I just have that covered up on this one for privacy. And so he did all of that for me. And then I just layered it together, and that brings me to your first tip. The first tip is, when you're layering together, make sure that you have them stuck well enough that they're not going to shift and move during the laminating process. But you don't have to use a ton of adhesive like you would if you were making a card or something that wasn't laminated, because the purpose is just to keep it together long enough until you get it laminated, because once you make your sandwich and you run it through that heat laminator, everything's going to stick just fine. So I just did, you know, the least amount that I felt comfortable with to get that laminated. So I did the math. I made these 8.5 by 5.5. And I went in and I ordered my printables. Now I use Annie Plans printables, and I am going to tell you that that brings me to my second tip, and that is choose the size that's best for your project. Now I personally love B6 size. That's my go-to. I also order a couple others for different things throughout the year, but because I was making so many of these, I wanted to do the least amount of cuts possible. And she actually offered these two calendars that I'm going to show you in what was a half letter size. So for American units of measure, it was literally a half a sheet of paper, which for me was perfect because I was making 20 of these and I wanted to be able to just one cut and I was done. So if you're not making a ton of them, maybe you want to change it up and make it more size to what your students would be. And I will put the link down to these particular calendars. Annie is definitely my go-to for my printables. So you'll see that this is a 2021 insert. It's actually a month on 2-page insert that goes from July of 2020 till June of 2021 to encompass the school year. So I printed them all. I used 28-pound paper, which brings me to my third tip. Keep in mind who the books are for when you're choosing the paper, and it will save you some money. So I wasn't thinking very clearly, and I thought, because I think with my, what I would like for me, brain, not so much what's practical and who my audience always is. So I bought a ream of 28-pound paper, which is what I use in my personal inserts. And I actually even got it on sale, but I think it was still about $15 for the ream when I was making these, and I thought, boy, I'm going to really blow through that paper. And then I got to thinking, you know what, some of these are for little kids who would never know the difference between 28-pound paper and 20-pound paper. So for the second insert, for quite a few of them, I used the 20-pound paper, because for this calendar, that's just fine. They're not doing all the things that I do with mine. And some of these are little enough kids that they're really not using them anyway. I just wanted to make sure that they had them because their older siblings may have them. And so know what you're doing and why you're doing it, and use the paper that is best for your budget on that. My fourth tip is, you'll notice in this corner I put a little T, and that is because I was doing, like I said, I was doing 20 of these, and you want to be sure that when you are sandwiching everything together, whether you're binding it yourself or if you're doing as I did and taking it to a printer to bind for you, you want to make sure that it's all in there, not upside down. And so I put a T on the front of this insert. I did the same on the front of this insert so that they wouldn't get flipped over and I would accidentally have them all wonky, and it would just be frustrating and a mess, and honestly a waste of money by the time I bound them. So that's my next tip. So I put together an insert in the middle. Again, some of them were more customized than the others. Some of them just had the scripture on there. And so then I also made sure that that was laminated. And then I wanted to make a bookmark, which brings me to my next tip. When you're making a bookmark, think through that, because my thought was I want it to be able to be taller, but I didn't want it necessarily, that's fine, you can just move it. And I had it punched, you can see I can just pull it right out. I had it punched when the binder, when I took it to be bound, I had him punch all of these for me. What I didn't do, and what I would do if I changed it again, is I would, like a more traditional bookmark, say like a tag almost, I would put a top like that on it, so that when the holes were punched, they would start down below, so then you could put them here and you wouldn't see the holes in the top. So that's just a tip, a live and learn tip that I would do differently next time. And then what I did is, because he punched them for me, but obviously then it's not a bookmark, it's just a spiral punched piece of paper, I went in and I took a little tiny pair of scissors and I snipped between each of those. Now that sounds really tedious. Honestly, it wasn't that bad, and I could do 2 of them at a time. The first time you put them in the book, sometimes it's a little bit tough to get them in, but the more that you put them in and take them out, the easier it is to punch them in and out. I will tell you that probably with this fine of a hole, I doubt that this is going to last them the full school year, quite frankly. It may not, it just depends on how much they use it. But it's just kind of something that's nice. They can always go back in and put in a clip. And then finally on this one, this brings me to my final tip. When you're putting together your last insert. Now, as I mentioned, I use Annie Plans printables, and this insert actually had a cover, it's very similar to the cover on the first insert. This insert also only filled 13 weeks. Well, 13 weeks doesn't get us through a school year. And so I had to really think through and do the math. I didn't necessarily want the cover, and printing all of those covers in color, I thought, well, that's going to get a little bit, it's using more colored ink than what I really want to use, and I really don't need it because, you know, this is nice enough. And so I printed the first set of inserts for all of the books, the first 13 weeks. And I started on page 2 so I wouldn't have the cover, which was fine, because at the end what happens, because there was an odd number of pages, that left me with this blank one, which is perfect, because then I don't have like half a calendar here or anything. That's perfect. However, because I needed to do multiple of them, I ended up doing just over 3 inserts for each book, because I wanted them to have about 40 weeks worth of stuff in here. Gave a little bit of allowance for mistakes, also gave a little bit of allowance for those partial weeks. You know, you go to school for 2 weeks and then you're off for the rest of the week, and then so I wanted to have 40 in here. So what I did with that is I started on page 3, so that then I would have an even number of pages, or even number of weeks, and then I just figured out, again, got to use that math. The kids are going to be using it all year, we can use it too. So I use that math to figure out exactly how many I needed to print, and invariably I made mistakes and would have to print more, or maybe had a couple left over or whatever, but that way I would have plenty of these. But then when you got to week 14, you didn't have another blank page right in the middle. That's a waste of paper and annoying both. So that's just how I chose to do it. Some people may want that blank page. You know, you get to page, you know, typically a school quarter may have about 9 weeks in it or so. Well, maybe you want a blank page between your quarters. So do what works for you, but for me, this is how I did it. So that is the tip on those. So they turned out great. I then took them, took my laminated pieces. I used just my regular laminator. I have a Your Story. I have Scotch laminating heat sheets, and unfortunately these I didn't feel comfortable putting 2 in a page, because that it didn't leave much room. If you wiggled, you could easily overlap, or you might not have enough room for the sill between the 2 to then cut it, and it just made me uneasy. I figured out the cost. I think it cost me about 15 cents a sheet to laminate, so it wasn't astronomical. So I did For the bookmarks, I would put a sheet and a bookmark until I ran out of bookmarks, and then it was just one per sheet. If you are being really thrifty, you could always cut your sheets before you ever put your pages in it, and then you would have nearly half a sheet left over to use for other projects. That would definitely be a more thrifty way to do it, but for me, I was just trying to get them done quickly. So there we have these books. I am super excited. Now I need to get them all in the mail, get them sent off so that they have them in time for school. So I hope you found that useful. Again, I'll put the links to the printables down in the little description box down below the video. And I hope you come back and see what else we have cooking through the year. So thanks so much for stopping by today. And remember, take some time to enjoy the little things. Have a great day. Bye.